Hansel and Gretel. Once upon a time, in a small village nestled between a dark forest and rolling hills, there lived a poor woodcutter and his two children, Hansel and Gretel. The family was very poor, and though the woodcutter worked hard every day, there never seemed to be enough food to go around. They lived in a modest cottage made of wood and straw, with only a small hearth to keep them warm during the long, cold winters. The woodcutter's wife, a harsh and unkind woman, grew impatient with their poverty. She often scolded her husband and blamed him for their lack of food. One day, after yet another meager meal, she came up with a plan. "Husband," she said, "we must get rid of the children. We cannot afford to feed them any longer. We will take them deep into the forest and leave them there. Then we will be rid of them, and we will have more food for ourselves." The woodcutter, though a kind man at heart, was weak and afraid of his wife. Reluctantly, he agreed to her cruel plan, and they decided to take the children into the forest the very next day. When Hansel and Gretel overheard their parents talking late into the night, they were terrified. They knew what was coming, and they didn't know how to escape. But Hansel, who was clever, had an idea. He sneaked out of the house and collected small white pebbles from the yard. He put them in his pocket, hoping they would help them find their way back home. The next morning, when the parents told Hansel and Gretel they were going for a walk in the forest, the children tried to act normal. They did not speak of their plan, but Hansel dropped the pebbles along the path as they walked deeper and deeper into the woods. As they reached a clearing, the woodcutter and his wife told the children to sit and rest while they gathered firewood. But instead of returning for them, they left them alone in the forest. As evening approached, Hansel and Gretel realized they had been abandoned. But Hansel's pebbles shimmered in the moonlight, and they followed the trail he had made, leading them back to the safety of their cottage. When they arrived home, their father was overjoyed to see them, but their stepmother was furious. She had not expected the children to return so easily. Determined to carry out her plan, she told the woodcutter that the children must be sent away once again. This time, Hansel and Gretel were not so fortunate. Their stepmother locked the door to their room to prevent them from leaving, and Hansel was unable to gather any pebbles. The next day, they were once again led deep into the forest, this time farther than before. Hansel, feeling hopeless, began to drop crumbs from the bread they had for breakfast, hoping they would mark the path home. But when they turned back to follow the breadcrumbs, they found that the birds had eaten them all. They were lost in the dark forest with no way to find their way back. Exhausted, hungry, and frightened, Hansel and Gretel wandered through the woods, calling out for help, but no one came. As they walked deeper into the forest, they stumbled upon a strange house. It was made entirely of gingerbread, candy, and sweet frosting, with windows of sugar and walls of chocolate. The house seemed like a dream to the hungry children, and they began to nibble at the walls, devouring the sweet treats. Suddenly, the door creaked open, and an old woman appeared. She was hunched over and had a twisted smile, but she seemed kind. "Oh, my dears," she said with a voice like honey, "you must be hungry. Come inside, and I will give you a warm meal and a safe bed to sleep in." Hansel and Gretel, too tired to be cautious, followed the old woman into the house. She fed them a hearty meal and let them rest in soft beds, but the children did not know that the old woman was not as kind as she seemed. She was, in fact, a wicked witch who lived in the house of sweets to lure children to their doom. The next morning, the witch locked Hansel in a cage and set him to work fattening him up for her feast. She made Gretel do all the housework, cooking and cleaning while she prepared to eat Hansel. But Gretel, clever and brave, pretended to be too slow to check if Hansel's finger was fat enough for the witch to eat. The witch, impatient, told her to check again. One day, when the witch told Gretel to check if Hansel was ready, Gretel tricked her by pretending not to understand. "You want me to check his finger. But I don't know how to do it. Could you show me?" she asked innocently. The witch, eager to have her feast, leaned over the cage. That was when Gretel seized her chance. With a swift push, she shoved the witch into the oven, locking the door behind her. The witch screamed in fury, but no one could hear her. Gretel freed Hansel from the cage, and the two children ran through the witch's house. They discovered a treasure chest full of jewels and gold, which they took with them. With the witch gone, the children found their way out of the forest and headed home, following the path that led them to safety. When they reached their cottage, they found that their father, who had been deeply sorrowful over abandoning them, was overjoyed to see them. Their stepmother, however, was gone, and the children never saw her again. The woodcutter was so grateful to have his children back that he promised to cherish them forever. Hansel and Gretel, having freed themselves from the witch's clutches, lived happily ever after with their father. They used the treasure they had found to build a new, comfortable home. No longer poor, they made sure to share their good fortune with those in need. And as for the wicked witch's house, it was forgotten, lost to time, as the forest reclaimed it. End. Moral of the story: Hansel and Gretel teaches us that courage, cleverness, and resourcefulness can help us overcome even the most difficult and dangerous challenges. It also reminds us that love and family can help heal the deepest wounds, and that kindness will always overcome cruelty.